The dim glow of the archival chamber hummed like a distant swarm, illuminating shelves that stretched into infinity, crystalline vaults holding the echoes of 1,000 worlds. Kel'Nar glided between them, his tentacles coiling around a data spike, eyes flickering across the holographic display. As Archivist Prime of the Vexery Concord, he had curated histories for empires that spanned galaxies, pruning the unworthy with surgical precision. Earth, that insignificant blue speck in Sol's unremarkable arm, had been a footnote at best. But footnotes could fester. He paused, mandibles clicking softly. The probe's report from 3 cycles ago still lingered in his neural cache. Primitive transmissions, endless wars over resources, a species teetering on self-destruction. No interstellar presence, no alliances worth noting. Yet something nagged at him. Their adaptability, the way they'd clawed from caves to near spaceflight in mere millennia. Anomalous. Disruptive. In the Concord's grand narrative, such outliers threatened cohesion. Erasure was mercy, really, a clean excision to prevent narrative bleed. Kel'Nar extended a manipulator arm, interfacing with the central nexus. Initiate protocol veil, he intoned, voice a resonant chime through the chamber's ether. The system acknowledged with a pulse of light, dispatching cloaked drones toward the Sol system. They would seed viral memetics into Earth's networks. Subtle rewrites of records, amplification of their internal fractures until the planet imploded under its own contradictions. No trace left, no ripple in the cosmic archive. He'd penned similar ends for the insectoid hives of Zorith and the nomadic fleets of the Driftborn. Earth would join them, unremembered. A subroutine pinged. Incoming query from subarchivist Lyra. She was young, her carapace still iridescent with unscarred ambition. Assigned to his sector after excelling in xenolinguistic simulations. Kel'Nar accepted the link, her hologram shimmering into view. Slender form hovering, eyes wide with that mix of deference and curiosity he found both endearing and inefficient. Prime, she began, tentacles weaving in formal greeting. The veil deployment is confirmed. But, the Sol subjects, their cultural output is prolific. Myths of resilience, tales of overcoming vast odds. Does it not risk? Echoes. Kel'Nar's primary eye narrowed, a ripple of irritation across his chromatophores. Lyra was cautious to a fault, always probing the why behind the edit. Echoes fade, subarchivist. We preserve the symphony, not the discord. Earth's noise disrupts the harmony of ascended species. Their erasure ensures purity. She hesitated, a flicker in her projection. Understood. Yet their ingenuity, crude yes, but they've engineered pandemics into vaccines, asteroids into warnings. What if the veil falters? He dismissed the concern with a wave, though a subtle unease coiled in his core. Humans were mammals, after all, chaotic, driven by emotion over logic. The drones would suffice. Monitor the feeds. Report anomalies directly to me. Lyra's hologram bowed and dissolved. Alone again, Kel'Nar returned to his spike, scrolling through preliminary scans. Cities sprawling like neural webs, vessels piercing their atmosphere on chemical fury. Primitive but persistent. He initiated a simulation, watching virtual drones infiltrate satellite relays, whispering doubts into global minds. Wars escalated, alliances crumbled. Earth folded inward, a star winking out. Satisfaction warmed his vents. The Concord's archives would remain pristine, a testament to order. But as the chamber's hum deepened into night cycle, Kel'Nar couldn't shake the simulation's final frame. A single human silhouette, defiant amid the ruins, fist raised not in surrender but challenge. Far across the void, in the cramped cockpit of the UNS Vanguard, Captain Elena Reyes gripped the throttle, her knuckles white against the worn synth leather. The ship shuddered as it punched through the Kuiper Belt's debris field, alarms blaring a staccato warning. Her crew, 3 souls in this tin can of a scout vessel, braced in their stations, the air thick with recycled sweat and ozone. Status, Jax, she barked, eyes locked on the forward viewport where stars smeared into streaks. Ensign Jax Harlan, the wiry engineer with a perpetual grease smear on his cheek, tapped furiously at his console. Shields at 62%, Cap. That last rock clipped us good, hull integrity holding, but we're venting Otmo from Bay 3. And, incoming signature. Multiple. Not ours. Elena's jaw tightened. She was brave to the bone, the kind who'd stared down pirate boards in the Belt Wars without flinching, but caution whispered now. The Vanguard wasn't built for deep recon. It was a relic patched together from colony haulers. Their mission: probe the outer rim for resource nodes, report back to Mars Command. But these signatures, sleek, silent, closing fast, smelled like trouble from beyond the heliopause. Evasive pattern Delta, she ordered, voice steady. Beside her, Dr. Mira Voss, the xenobiologist with sharp wit and sharper tongue, strapped in tighter, her tablet glowing with sensor data. Alien tech? Mira asked, brow arched. Or just fancy trash from some forgotten probe? Jax snorted, rerouting power. If it's trash, it's got better manners than our engines. They're jamming comms, long-range stead. Elena banked hard, the ship groaning as it dodged a glittering fragment. The signatures multiplied on the tactical overlay, encircling like wolves. No hails, no warnings. Just pursuit. Her mind raced. First contact? Salvagers? Worse. Arm countermeasures, she said. And Jax, get me eyes on those bogies. As the Vanguard twisted into the black, a faint transmission pierced the jam. A garbled chime, alien and insistent. Elena's gut twisted. Whatever hunted them, it wasn't here for chat. And in the cold expanse, humanity's grit was all they had. Kel'Nar's tentacles twitched against the cold metal of his restraints, the hum of the human ship's engines vibrating through his exoskeleton like a distant storm. He had expected the void of space to swallow him after the archive's collapse, but instead these primitives had dragged him aboard their crude vessel, their faces smeared with the grime of victory. The air recyclers wheezed, pumping in the acrid scent of recycled oxygen mixed with something sharper. Sweat, perhaps, or the tang of blood from wounds not yet tended. He flexed his primary manipulator, testing the bonds. They held firm, woven from some synthetic fiber that bit into his chitin without yielding. Captain Elena Vasquez paced the holding cell, her boots thudding softly on the grated floor. She was a wiry woman, her dark hair cropped short under a cap that bore the faded emblem of the United Earth Fleet. Her eyes, sharp as the laser cutters they'd used to breach his sanctuary, flicked toward him every few steps. Beside her stood Marcus Hale, the engineer, his hands still black with lubricant from jury-rigging the ship's failing hyperdrive. He leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, his breath coming in steady huffs that betrayed the pain from a fractured rib he refused to acknowledge. "You thought you could just wipe us out of history," Elena said, stopping to face him. Her voice was level, but the undercurrent of steel made Kel'Nar's secondary eyes dilate. "Like we were some footnote in your grand galactic narrative. But here we are, and you're the one spilling secrets." Kel'Nar's translator implant buzzed to life, rendering his response in their guttural tongue. "Your species is an anomaly, Captain. A fleeting spark in the cosmos. The Galactic Concordance deemed Earth's interference disruptive. Your wars, your expansions. I merely chronicled the necessity of erasure. It was not personal." Marcus snorted, pushing off the wall with a wince. "Not personal. You fired the first shot on our colony worlds. Vaporized billions in your necessary purge. Call it what it is. Genocide with a historian's pen." The cell's dim lights cast long shadows, highlighting the scars on Elena's cheek from the boarding action. She knelt closer, her gloved hand resting on the console that monitored his vitals. The screen flickered, showing spikes in his neural activity. Fear, perhaps, or calculation. Kel'Nar had always prided himself on detachment. But these humans radiated a heat that seeped through his defenses, their camaraderie a weapon sharper than any plasma rifle. "I preserved the truth," Kel'Nar hissed, his beak clicking. "Your ingenuity is chaos. You build ships from scrap, weapons from desperation. The Concordance archives would have endured without your stain." Elena's lips curved into a grim smile. She tapped the console, and a holographic projection bloomed between them. Fragments of his own records salvaged from the wreckage. Schematics of erasure beams, timelines of targeted strikes. Truth? He doctored it all. Buried our alliances with the fringe worlds, our tech trades that kept the outer rims alive. We found the originals in your vault. Hidden files showing how you twisted the narrative to justify the wipe. Marcus stepped forward, his bulk filling the space. He'd been the one to crack the vault's encryption, fingers flying over a makeshift terminal while debris rained from the ceiling. "And now? You're gonna help us rewrite it. Starting with why the Concordance really fears us." The ship lurched suddenly, a deep groan echoing from the hull. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like wounds. Elena straightened, her hand instinctively going to the pistol at her hip. What the hell? Marcus was already at the intercom, barking orders to the bridge crew. Hyperdrive fluctuation. We're pulling too much grav from that nebula. If it destabilizes, we're space dust. Kel'Nar's mind raced, the restraints suddenly feeling less like chains and more like an opportunity. The human's vessel was a patchwork marvel, cobbled from salvaged alien tech and human grit, but it was fragile. A nebula's interference could mask a distress signal, summon concordance hunters. He kept his expression neutral, but inside calculations spun. Feign cooperation, exploit the chaos. Elena turned back to him, eyes narrowing. You know something about this, don't you? Your people rigged the archives with fail-safes, self-destruct beacons. He hesitated, the weight of his quill, now metaphorical, stained with the blood of his fallen aides, pressing on him. The nebula is a concordance trap. Residual fields from the erasure arrays. It amplifies signals, draws patrols like moths. Marcus cursed under his breath, slamming a fist against the console. The hologram wavered, then stabilized as he recalibrated. Great. So we're flying blind into their web. Elena, we need to vent the auxiliary power, reroute to shields. It'll buy us time, but we lose maneuverability. She nodded, decisive. Do it. And you? She jabbed a finger at Kel'Nar. Start talking. Coordinates, frequencies, anything to get us clear. Or I let Hale here dissect that implant of yours for the data. Kel'Nar's tentacles curled inward, the first crack in his scholarly armor. These humans didn't threaten with grand speeches. They acted, adapted, turned his own history against him. As the ship shuddered again, engines straining against the nebula's pull, he began to whisper the access codes, each word a betrayal of his oath. The cell filled with the scent of ozone, the air thick with unspoken stakes. Their survival hinged on his knowledge, but his own fate twisted in the unraveling threads of truth he'd once controlled. Captain Alara Voss gripped the control yoke as the shuttle shuddered through the nebula's fringes, its hull groaning against the ionized winds. Beside her, Dr. Marcus Hale scanned the readouts, his fingers dancing over holographic displays that flickered like hesitant fireflies. We're closing on the archive station, he said, voice steady but laced with the edge of exhaustion from days of evasion. Kel'Nar's signal is still pinging, arrogant bastard hasn't even tried to mask it. The view screen bloomed with the silhouette of the station, a colossal lattice of crystalline spires orbiting a gas giant's shadow, its surfaces etched with the glowing runes of a dozen forgotten empires. Alara's jaw tightened. She'd seen schematics in the stolen data core, but nothing prepared her for the scale, like a spider's web spun from starlight and spite. Kel'Nar, the self-proclaimed guardian of galactic history, had woven this place to bury worlds he deemed unworthy. Earth was next on his ledger, scrubbed clean because humanity's chaotic ingenuity threatened his pristine narratives. Locking docking clamps, Alara announced, her hands precise despite the adrenaline surge. The shuttle kissed the berth with a metallic sigh, and the airlock cycled open to a corridor humming with automated life. Marcus shouldered a toolkit, his cautious nature showing in the way he double-checked the breather mask seal. Remember, we need that central nexus intact. One wrong surge and the whole archive vaporizes, along with our proof. They moved in tandem, boots echoing softly on the polished floors that shifted hues underfoot, as if the station itself were alive and watchful. Alara led, her brave streak pushing her forward while Marcus mapped their route on a wrist projector, whispering warnings about pressure sensors. The air grew thicker, laced with an ozone tang that made their eyes water. No guards yet. Kel'Nar's confidence, or perhaps his isolation, left the halls eerily empty. A soft chime echoed ahead, and the corridor walls irised open to reveal the antechamber. There, suspended in a web of energy filaments, floated the first defense. A swarm of archival drones, their lens eyes whirring to life. Alara drew her pulse pistol, firing a warning shot that scattered a few, but they reformed with mechanical precision, lasers grazing her shoulder armor in retaliation. Plan B, Marcus barked, slamming a disruptor pulse from his toolkit. It bought them seconds, the drones stuttering mid-air, but one latched onto his leg, injecting a numbing agent that buckled his knee. Alara hauled him up, her breath ragged as they dashed past the faltering barrier. Blood trickled from a shallow cut on her arm, real cost, the first tangible bite of the station's defenses. Deeper in, the nexus loomed, a pulsating orb of data streams where Kel'Nar's essence interfaced directly. But as they approached, alarms wailed and the floor panels retracted, revealing a chasm drop to recycling vents below. Their early plan, to slip in quietly and extract the Earth files, backfired spectacularly. The station had adapted, learning from their intrusion like a living archive. Ilara anchored her grapple line to a stanchion, tossing the other end to Marcus. "We adapt or we fall," she grunted, pulling him across the gap as drones buzzed back to life behind them. His witty retort died on his lips, replaced by a grimace of effort. They cleared the chasm just as the panels resealed, sealing their path forward but trapping the swarm on the other side, for now. In the Nexus chamber, holographic annals swirled like storm clouds, fragments of erased histories whispering accusations. Kel'Nar's voice boomed from the core, smooth and condescending. "Intruders from the void you call home. You cannot rewrite what I have deemed obsolete." Ilara holstered her pistol, eyes narrowing. This was no simple heist. It was a reckoning, and the stakes clawed higher with every beat of her heart. Kel'Nar's tentacles twitched against the cold metal restraints, the hum of the human vessel's engines vibrating through his chitinous frame. He stared at the flickering holoscreen before him, its glow casting harsh shadows across the cramped command nook. Captain Ilara Voss leaned against the bulkhead, her arms crossed, eyes like sharpened steel fixed on him. She was all edges, short-cropped hair, a scar tracing her jaw from some forgotten skirmish, and her presence filled the space like a storm about to break. "Talk," she said, voice low and unyielding. "Your archives. Where's the core?" Kel'Nar's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh, if his kind knew such a thing. The humans had dragged him from the ruins of his outpost on Epsilon Eridani, their crude boarding pods punching through his defenses like fists through paper. He'd compiled the erasure protocols himself, millennia of Terran history reduced to digital ash, their wars, their art, their fleeting triumphs scrubbed clean. But these primitives had reversed the flow, hauling him aboard to pry open the remnants. Beside Ilara stood Dr. Marcus Hale, the wiry xenolinguist, his fingers dancing over a jury-rigged tablet. Sweat beaded on his brow, not from fear but from the strain of interfacing alien code with human hardware. "The encryption's adaptive," Marcus muttered, not looking up. "It's rewriting itself faster than I can crack it. If we force it, the whole thing fries." "Then don't force it," Ilara snapped. Her boot scuffed the deck plating, a deliberate rhythm to keep her grounded. They'd been at this for hours, the ship's life support straining under the weight of their makeshift prison cell turned war room. Oxygen recyclers wheezed faintly in the background, a reminder of the dwindling reserves. The jump to Sol was still 2 days out, and with the alien Rex debris field playing havoc with their sensors, every minute counted. Kel'Nar shifted, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the screen's data streams. "You seek what cannot be restored," he rasped, his voice a synthesized hiss through the translator collar clamped around his neck. "The cycle demands purity. Earth's chaos pollutes the galaxy's record." Ilara stepped closer, her shadow engulfing him. "Purity? You call genocide purity?" She'd lost her brother in the first wave of erasures. Colonies vanishing, histories rewritten as footnotes. It wasn't rage that drove her now, but a cold calculus. Get the core, rebuild the archives, expose the Concord's lies. The third crew member, Engineer Lena Torres, lingered by the hatch, her toolkit slung over one shoulder. Compact and quick, she'd been the one to hotwire the alien consoles, her hands steady even as sparks flew. "We adapt or die," Lena said quietly, wiping grease from her palms. "Same as always." She glanced at Marcus. "Can we shunt power from the auxiliary drives? Slow us down but buy time." Marcus nodded, but his face tightened. "Risky. The field's got gravitic eddies, could throw us off course." Kel'Nar sensed the fracture, the human hesitation. These were not the warriors he'd dismissed in his annals. They were scavengers, piecing together victory from scraps. He probed the weakness. "Your ingenuity is a myth. The core will self-destruct before you touch it." Ilara ignored him, turning to Marcus. "Do it. Lena, reroute the power. We crack this now or we limp home with nothing." Lena moved like a shadow, prying open a panel with a hiss of pressurized air. Wires snaked out, a tangle of human red and alien iridescence. She worked methodically, splicing connections while Marcus fed commands into the tablet. The holoscreen flickered, data streams accelerating into a frenzy of symbols. Terran dates, battle logs, cultural uploads that Kel'Nar had deemed irrelevant noise. A low groan echoed through the hull. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing. "Eddie's hitting us," Lena called, her voice steady but edged. The ship bucked, throwing Marcus against the console. His tablet sparked, the screen fracturing into static. "Hold it." Alara grabbed the bulkhead, muscles straining. Kel'Nar felt the lurch in his core, the restraints biting deeper. The human's plan was unraveling just as he'd calculated. But then Marcus lunged, slamming a manual override. The screen stabilized for a heartbeat, glimpses of Earth's past flashing. Pyramids under alien skies, first contact gone wrong, human fleets rising from the ashes. "It's working," Marcus breathed. "Partial access. But the core's purging, fast." Kel'Nar's mind raced. He couldn't let them see the full erasure logs, the Concord's directive to paint humans as pests, not pioneers. With a surge, he flexed against the restraints, not to escape but to disrupt. His tentacle whipped out, knocking the tablet from Marcus's grip. It clattered across the deck, screen shattering. Alara whirled, drawing her sidearm in one fluid motion. "You son of a..." The ship shuddered again, harder this time. A bulkhead groaned, and somewhere aft, a vent popped with a sharp crack. Lena cursed, diving for the tablet's remains. Power surge backfiring. "Recyclers are offline. We're venting Otmo." Marcus scrambled to his feet, face pale. "We've got minutes before hypoxia." "Alara, call it." She holstered the weapon, eyes locked on Kel'Nar. He met her gaze, unblinking, the taste of victory bitter on his senses. But the humans didn't fold. Alara barked orders. "Lena, seal the nook, make it airtight." "Marcus, grab what data you can from the shards. We're not losing this." Lena slapped a patch over the hatch seal, the material expanding with a chemical. The dim glow of the auxiliary lights flickered across the chamber walls, casting long shadows that danced like specters from Earth's forgotten myths. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white against the cold metal. Her team, Dr. Marcus Hale, the wiry xenolinguist with a perpetual squint, and Sergeant Kira Voss, broad-shouldered and unyielding, huddled close, their breaths sinking in the recycled air. They'd breached the outer archives of the Zethari Citadel 2 hours ago, but the real prize lay deeper. Kel'Nar's sanctum, where the alien historian hoarded the threads of galactic history like a miser with souls. "Scans show a pressure seal ahead," Marcus whispered, his voice a rasp over the hum of their suits. He adjusted his visor, pulling up holographic readouts that shimmered like fractured ice. "It's not just a door, it's a neural lock. Tied to his biology. One wrong move and it floods the corridor with neurotoxin." Elena nodded, her dark eyes narrowing. She'd led scavenging runs on derelict colony ships before the Zethari purge, but this was different. No rusting hulls or zero-G drifts. This was the heart of the empire that had scrubbed humanity from the star's memory. Kel'Nar, that spindly scholar with his iridescent scales and 8-fingered grasp on lies, had authored the edict himself, erasing Earth as a footnote, a glitch in the cosmos. Now, with their stealth shuttle hidden in the asteroid belt, they were here to rewrite the narrative. But the cost was already mounting. Kira's arm, scored by a sentry drone's graze, throbbed under the med patch. Kira hefted her pulse rifle, the weapon's stock scarred from a dozen skirmishes. "Then we improvise. I've got breaching charges. Low yield. We blow the seal, dive in, and grab the core data before his guards swarm." Her tone was steady, the caution of a soldier who'd seen friends vaporized by orbital strikes, tempered by the fire in her gut. Humans didn't beg for remembrance, they clawed it back. Elena hesitated, tracing the faint scar on her palm from a childhood on the refugee arcs. The plan had been clean. Infiltrate, extract the historical codex proving Earth's alliances predated the Zethari conquest, broadcast it to the neutral worlds. But the Citadel's defenses had adapted faster than expected, turning corridors into labyrinths of shifting force fields. Their first attempt at the sanctum had backfired spectacularly, a decoy alarm that summoned a patrol, forcing them to vent a section and seal it with bodies, metaphorical and otherwise. "Charges might trigger a cascade shutdown," she said finally. "We lose power, we're blind." Marcus, any linguistic bypass? Something from their texts. He scrolled through his tablet, fingers flying. A single glyph pulsed on the screen. A spiral of conquest, Zethary Script 4 Eternal Archive. There's a ritual phrase, invoked by historians to access restricted vaults. But it's verbal and laced with biometrics. We'd need a sample of Kel'Nar's voice. His squint deepened, a flicker of ingenuity sparking. Earth ingenuity, the kind that turned scrap into salvation. Kira snorted softly. Great. So we lure the bastard out? He's not some alley rat. Guy's got layers of acolytes. The air vents hissed, a reminder of the thinning oxygen. Elena's mind raced, piecing fragments from intercepted transmissions. Kel'Nar wasn't just erasing history, he was curating it, weaving human defiance into tales of Zethary benevolence. If they failed here, the neutral worlds would buy the lie, leaving Earth's remnants to fade in the void. She straightened, decision crystallizing. We don't lure him. We become him. Marcus, synthesize the voice from the archives we cracked earlier. Overlay it with a distress signal. Make it sound like an internal breach. Marcus's eyes widened behind his visor. Risky. The neural lock might feedback, fry our implants. But he was already working, his cautious nature yielding to the thrill of the puzzle. Kira grinned, a rare crack in her armor. Humans first, remember? We adapt or we die. They moved as one, Elena keying the synthesizer while Kira prepped the charges as backup. The corridor ahead gleamed, a seamless wall of obsidian alloy etched with glowing runes. Marcus fed the phrase into the comms. A lilting Zethary cadence, distorted just enough to mimic urgency. Sanctum breach. Intruders in the weave. Authorization Kel'Nar Prime. The wall shuddered. A low groan echoed like the citadel awakening. Seals parted with a hiss, revealing an antechamber lined with crystalline data spires, each humming with stolen epochs. But no triumph yet. Alarms wailed faintly in the distance, and from the shadows a figure emerged. Not a guard but an acolyte robed in shimmering silk, its multifaceted eyes locking on them. Intruders, it intoned, voice like grinding glass. The historian's truth is inviolate. Kira raised her rifle, but Elena waved her down. This was the pivot, the early plan cracking under reality's weight. They needed the acolyte alive, for its biometrics could bridge the final lock. Elena lunged, her boot connecting with the alien's midsection in a tackle honed from zero-G drills. It thrashed, limbs flailing, but Kira was there, pinning it with efficient brutality. Marcus darted forward, scanner humming as he extracted a vocal sample mid-struggle. The acolyte's cry cut short as the med sedative took hold. Elena rose, wiping ichor from her glove, the weight of the moment settling like dust after a storm. They'd gained entry, but the sanctum's core lay beyond another barrier, and the alarms were drawing closer. Kel'Nar's blood, metaphorical for now, would stain their path, but so would their own if they faltered. The dim glow of the auxiliary console flickered across Captain Alara Voss's face as she hunched over the controls, her fingers dancing across the haptic interface. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from the failing life support but from the gnawing certainty that Kel'Nar's trap had sprung tighter than they'd anticipated. The alien historian's ship, a labyrinth of crystalline archives and shadow-veiled corridors, hummed with a deceptive calm, but the readouts screamed otherwise. Hull integrity at 47%, oxygen reserves dipping below critical. Beside her, Marcus Hale wiped grime from his brow, his engineer's toolkit splayed open like a gutted beast. This isn't just a breach, he muttered, voice rough from recycled air. He's rerouted the power grid to flood the lower decks. We lose that and the whole archive core goes dark, his precious history with it. Alara nodded sharply, her cautious nature warring with the urgency in her gut. She'd always been the planner, the one who mapped contingencies before leaping, but out here in the void plans frayed like old sails. The team, her, Marcus, and the wiry linguist Jax, had boarded Kel'Nar's vessel under the guise of a diplomatic exchange, only to uncover his plot. A systematic purge of Earth's records from the galactic annals, painting humanity as a fleeting anomaly unworthy of remembrance. Now with the air growing thick and the ship's defenses awakening, escape felt like a cruel joke. Jax, talk to me, she said, glancing at the comms panel where their third member patched in from the archive chamber. Any luck cracking his encryption? Static crackled, then Jax's voice cut through. laced with his usual wit sharpened by strain. Luck? This is Kel'Nar we're dealing with. The guy who rewrote the fall of the Zorth Empire to make himself look noble. His code's a fortress of nested paradoxes. But I've got a thread. A backdoor in the historical simulator. If I can invert it, it might overload his purge protocols. A pause, heavy with the sound of tapping keys. Problem is, it'll draw power from the stabilizers. We could spin out into the debris field. Marcus snorted, slamming a panel shut with more force than necessary. Spin out. Better than suffocating while he monologues about our insignificant species. His bravery bordered on recklessness, the kind that had saved their skins on the frontier runs, but it chafed against Alara's measured steps. She shot him a look, steady your fire, and rerouted what auxiliary power she could, buying them minutes. The ship groaned, a metallic wail echoing through the bulkheads as another stress fracture spiderwebbed across the viewport. Outside, the asteroid belt loomed, jagged rocks tumbling in silent chaos, a graveyard for forgotten ships. Down in the archive core, Jax worked faster, his fingers blurring over the alien glyphs that pulsed like living veins. The chamber was a cathedral of light and shadow, shelves of holographic tomes stretching into infinity, each one a thread in the galaxy's tapestry. Kel'Nar had curated it meticulously, erasing rivals with a historian's precision, but humans? To him they were ink blots to be blotted out. Jax grinned fiercely as the code yielded, a clever twist of logic born from Earth's chaotic databases, poetry and quantum physics mashed together. Got it, he whispered to himself, initiating the inversion. Alarms blared immediately, red strobes painting the walls in blood hues. The purge sequence reversed, not with a bang but a cascade, Earth's records flooding back unbidden into the core. Up on the bridge, the ship lurched. Alara gripped the console as gravity fluctuated, loose tools skittering across the deck. Hold on. Marcus braced against her, his hand steady on her shoulder. A rare moment of unspoken camaraderie amid the storm. The readouts spiked, power surging then diverting wildly. Kel'Nar's voice boomed over the intercom, distorted and furious, his native tongue twisting into something serpentine. Intruders. You tamper with eternity's weave. Humanity's echo ends here. Alara's mind raced, piecing the fragments. The reversal had worked, but it triggered a failsafe, sealing bulkheads, isolating sections. Jax was trapped in the core, and the only way to him was through a collapsing corridor. Marcus, suit up. We're going manual. Her voice was steel, caution yielding to action. He nodded, no argument, grabbing the emergency breather and plasma cutter. As they moved, the ships hummed deep into a roar, the asteroid field closing in like a predator's jaws. They reached the corridor just as it buckled, sparks flying from severed conduits. Marcus cut through the jammed door, his movements precise despite the tremor in his arms. Inside, the air was acrid, laced with ozone, and the walls pulsed with failing energy fields. Jax. Status. Alara called, her beacon light cutting through the haze. A cough answered, then Jax's face emerged from the gloom, smeared with coolant. Reversals holding, Earth's data's intact, broadcasting to the network. But Kel'Nar's overriding it from his sanctum. We need to reach him or he'll wipe it all again. His eyes, sharp and knowing, met hers. No panic, just the wit that turned fear into fuel. Together they pressed on, the trio reforming in the belly of the beast. As they advanced, a new alarm pierced the din. Structural collapse imminent. The ship wasn't just fighting back. It was unraveling, Kel'Nar's desperation tearing at its seams. Alara felt the weight of it, the cost of their intrusion, the risk to the archives they'd come to save. One wrong step and not just Earth's history but their own would bleed into the void. Marcus led the charge, cutter blazing, while Jax murmured translations of the ship's warnings. Kel'Nar's claws trembled as he clutched the data slate, the dim glow of the archive chamber casting long shadows across the crystalline walls. The air hummed with the faint whine of failing life support systems, a reminder that the human vessel they'd commandeered was as battered as his resolve. He'd come here to bury the truth, Earth's improbable survival, its warriors' unyielding grit. But now, surrounded by the ghosts of deleted records, doubt clawed at him like a feral beast. Captain Reyes leaned against the console, her uniform torn at the shoulder where shrapnel had grazed her days ago. Blood still flecked the fabric, a stark red against the gray. She didn't flinch when the ship shuddered from another micrometeor hit. Instead, she fixed her dark eyes on Kel'Nar. "You're stalling, historian. We both know that Slate holds the last uncorrupted log of the Eridani fleet's defeat. Hand it over or I'll pry it from your cold, dead fins." Beside her, Dr. Lena Voss tinkered with a jury-rigged translator device, her fingers smeared with lubricant from the engine repairs they'd hacked together in the void. The wiry engineer's brow furrowed in concentration, but her voice cut through the tension like a laser. "She's right, Kel. Your people tried to wipe us out because they couldn't handle the truth. Humans don't break easy. We adapt. Now adapt with us or get left in the dust." Kel'Nar hissed, his iridescent scales rippling with agitation. He'd always prided himself on precision, on weaving narratives that shaped empires. But these Terrans, they didn't fit the script. Back on the bridge, when the fleet's armada had crumbled under their improvised EMP bursts and boarding tactics, he'd watched in horror as a single human squad turned the tide. No grand strategy, just raw, desperate ingenuity. And now, trapped in this drifting hulk light years from help, he was rewriting his own history. The ship lurched again, harder this time, and alarms blared. A hull breach in the lower decks. Voss cursed under her breath, slamming a panel shut. "That's the third one today. If we don't seal it, we're venting Otmo faster than a politician's promises." Reyes straightened, her hand instinctively going to the sidearm at her hip. "Kel'Nar, you're the expert on your tech. Help us patch this and maybe I'll let you keep that slate as a souvenir. Refuse and you're just another casualty in this mess." He hesitated, the weight of erased worlds pressing on him. In his mind's eye, he saw the burning archives of his homeworld, the deliberate purges to hide humanity's rise. But here in the flickering light he saw something else. Reyes's unyielding stare, Voss's quick hands already pulling tools from her belt. They weren't conquerors. They were survivors, turning scraps into salvation. With a reluctant flick of his tail, Kel'Nar extended the slate. "Very well. The logs show your species. Adaptations began with the quantum drives you stole from us. But the breach, it's in the auxiliary seals. We can reroute power from the archive core." Voss snatched the device, her eyes lighting up as she scanned the schematics. "Reroute? How we can do better. Reyes, cover us. I'll need 5 minutes to weld a bulkhead from those spare hull plates." As they moved, the chamber's emergency lights stuttered, plunging them into near darkness for a heartbeat. Kel'Nar felt the pull of old loyalties fraying, replaced by the sharp tang of possibility. The humans dashed into the corridor, tools clanging while he followed, slate tucked under his arm. For the first time he wondered if the real history wasn't in the deletions, but in the choices yet to be made. Deeper in the ship, the breach hissed like a serpent, frost creeping along the walls as air escaped into the black. Voss dropped to her knees, arc welder sparking to life in the vacuum-sealed suits they donned hastily. "Hold her steady, Kel," she barked over the comms. Reyes braced the plate, her muscles straining against the cold metal, while Kel'Nar interfaced his neural link with the ship's dying AI, feeding it commands in his native tongue. The weld glowed blue, sealing the tear with a sizzle that echoed through their helmets. But as the alarms quieted, a new ping echoed, proximity alert. Voss glanced at her scanner, face paling. "Incoming drone swarm. Your cleanup crew must have tracked us." Reyes holstered her weapon, a grim smile cracking her lips. "Then we fight like we always do. Kel'Nar, you're with us now. Time to write a new chapter." He nodded, the slate's glow reflecting in his eyes like fresh ink on parchment. The void outside swarmed with shadows, but inside, alliances forged in crisis burned brighter. The dim glow of the auxiliary console flickered across DR. Ilara Voss's face as she hunched over the salvaged data core, her fingers dancing across the haptic interface. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from the heat of the cramped shuttle bay, but from the relentless tick of the countdown in her mind. 3 hours until the orbital lockdown sealed them in with the swarm. Alex Kane paced behind her, his boots thudding softly against the grated floor, each step a reminder of the lives hanging in the balance. "Talk to me, Ilara," Alex said, his voice steady but edged with the gravel of exhaustion. He stopped, leaning against a bulkhead scarred by plasma burns. "Is this relic from Kel'Nar's archive giving us anything we can use?" She didn't look up, her eyes locked on the swirling holographic projections, fragments of ancient Terran code intertwined with vexary encryption. It's like untangling a knot made of light. The historian buried Earth's first contact deep, but I've got a thread. Their fleet's AI core relies on predictive algorithms, the kind that anticipates human tactics because it learned from our history vids. Clever bastards. Mira Ruiz snorted from her perch on a crate, tinkering with a jury-rigged EMP emitter. Her dark hair was tied back with a strip of insulation tape, and grease streaked her cheek like war paint. Predictive? More like paranoid. Kel'Nar's been rewriting the stars to make us look like the aggressors. If we flip that script, we turn their own fear against them. The shuttle bay hummed with the low thrum of failing life support, the air recyclers straining against the influx of ionized particles from the nebula outside. Alex glanced at the viewport, where the Vexery dreadnought loomed like a jagged shadow, its tendrils of sensor webs probing the void. They'd slipped through the blockade on a Hail Mary burn from the asteroid field, but now they were cornered, the swarm of interceptor drones closing in like metallic locusts. Alara's console beeped sharply and she froze. Got it. A backdoor in their historical database. Kel'Nar's personal override. If we inject our counter-narrative, it could cascade through their network, make the AI question its own directives. Alex nodded, crossing his arms. Question enough to stand down? Or just confuse them long enough for us to punch a hole in that lockdown? Confusion's our best shot, Mira chimed in, snapping the emitter's casing shut with a satisfying click. I've tuned this baby to fry their drone sink. But we need a vector. Can't beam it from here without getting shredded. Thorn, the Vexery defector, shifted uneasily in the corner, his iridescent scales dull under the human lights. He clutched the translator collar around his neck, his cautious eyes darting between them. Kel'Nar's mind is a fortress. He will sense the intrusion. I have seen him purge entire sectors for less. Alex shot him a look not unkind but firm. Then help us breach it, Thorn. You know their protocols better than anyone. Earn that collar. Thorn hesitated, then stepped forward, his clawed hands hovering over the console. The override sequence. It mimics a historian's seal. But it requires biometric confirmation, his essence. Alara's brow furrowed. Essence? Like DNA. More, Thorn murmured. A neural imprint. He carries it in his archival gauntlet. The pieces clicked for Alex. The gauntlet they'd pried from the debris of the last skirmish, now stashed in the shuttle's hold. Mira, get it? We're making this work. As Mira dashed off, the alarms blared, drones breaching the outer hull. Vibrations rattled the bay, and a distant clang echoed like a death knell. Alara worked faster, her breaths coming in short bursts, while Thorn guided her through the alien glyphs, his voice a low rumble of reluctant precision. Mira returned, gauntlet in hand, its surface pulsing with faint bioluminescent veins. This thing's alive. Creepy as hell. Interface it, Alara ordered, slotting it into the console. The holograms flared, then stabilized, weaving human defiance into Vexery code. Tales of resilience from Earth's forgotten wars, unerasable grit etched in digital fire. But as the upload began, the console sparked. Red warnings flooded the display. Thorn recoiled. He has anticipated. A failsafe, it's tracing us. Alex's jaw tightened. The dreadnought's silhouette sharpened in the viewport, weapons priming with a predatory hum. Their early plan to slip the counter-narrative quietly had backfired. Now the swarm accelerated, closing the noose. Abort. Mira asked, hand on the emitter. No, Alex growled, slamming the bulkhead. We adapt. Thorn, reroute through the drones, use them as relays. Alara, amplify the signal with everything we've got. Thorn's scales rippled with tension, but he nodded, claws flying. Alara poured auxiliary power into the core, the shuttle shuddering as systems strained. Mira primed the EMP, her witty grin fading into grim focus. The upload surged, a digital rebellion racing through the void. Outside, the first drone latched onto the hull with a screech of metal. Alex grabbed a pulse rifle from the rack, the weight familiar in his hands. Hold the line. We're not erasing anyone today, least of all us. The bay doors buckled under the assault, sparks flying like angry stars, but inside the upload ticked upward, 75%, 80% human ingenuity clawing back what Kel'Nar had stolen, one defiant bite at a time. Yet the cost mounted. A power surge fried secondary controls, leaving them blind to the nebula's treacherous currents. Escape, if it came, would be by the skin of their teeth, with scars that no history could fully mend. Kel'Nar's tentacles twitched against the restraints, the dim glow of the ship's emergency lights casting long shadows across the interrogation chamber. The air hummed with the faint vibration of the engines, strained from days of evasive maneuvers through the asteroid field. Captain Reyes leaned against the console, her arms crossed, eyes sharp as she watched the alien squirm. You think rewriting a few data slates erases what we've built? Billions of lives, cultures that outlasted your precious archives. The historian's multifaceted eyes flickered, reflecting the red emergency hue. He had once commanded vast halls of knowledge, curating the galaxy's truths for the Dominion. Now, bound to a human jury-rigged chair, his voice rasped through the translator. Your species is an anomaly. Chaotic. Destructive. I preserved order by excising your wars, your endless expansions. The records must reflect harmony. Engineer Patel snorted from the corner, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. He was the wiry type, always tinkering, his optimism a stark contrast to Rhea's steel resolve. Harmony. You call wiping out our history harmony? We've got backup drives hidden in ways you couldn't dream. But yeah, keep talking. Makes it easier to trace your overrides. The plan had been simple at first. Capture Kel'Nar during the raid on the Dominion outpost, force him to authenticate the restored Earth archives. But the alien's neural implants had triggered a cascade failure in the ship's systems 2 cycles ago. Alarms still blared intermittently, warning of hull breaches from micrometeors they couldn't dodge. Reyes glanced at the viewport, where jagged rocks tumbled in slow menace, one grazing the shields with a distant thud. We're losing power, Patel muttered, patching a flickering panel. That last override he pulled fried the auxiliary core. If we don't reroute soon, we're driftwood. Kel'Nar's beak clicked in what might have been amusement. Your ingenuity is your curse. You adapt, you innovate, but you never learn restraint. I could have integrated you peacefully, but your defiance forces my hand. His tentacles flexed, and a subtle pulse emanated from his implants. A hidden signal Reyes realized too late. The lights dimmed further, consoles sparking. Patel lunged for the manual override, fingers flying over exposed wiring. He's calling in reinforcements. The signal's bouncing off those rocks. Dominion trackers will pinpoint us in minutes. Reyes drew her sidearm, pressing it to Kel'Nar's temple. Shut it down or I paint these walls with whatever passes for your brains. Her voice was steady but sweat beaded on her forehead. The stakes had escalated, not just their lives but the archives they carried. Lose the ship and Earth's true history, flaws, triumphs, all vanished again. The alien hissed, his eyes narrowing. Kill me and the signal completes. Your blood will write the final erasure. It was a bluff, or was it? Patel's hands trembled as he spliced cables, sparks dancing like fireflies. A low groan echoed through the hull, the asteroid field tightening its grip as the engines stuttered. Captain, Patel said, voice tight, I can jam the signal but it'll take the main drive offline. We'll be sitting ducks. Reyes hesitated, the weight of command pressing like the void outside. Kel'Nar watched her, unblinking, his words a venomous whisper. Choose human. Your grit against the stars. She holstered the weapon, nodding to Patel. Do it. We adapt or we die. The engineer slammed the patch into place and the chamber plunged into near darkness, save for the glow of Kel'Nar's eyes. Silence fell, broken only by the creak of straining metal. Outside, a Dominion probe streaked past, its scan missing them by a hair's breadth. But the cost lingered. Power reserves dropped to critical. They'd limp to the nearest relay if the field didn't crush them first. Reyes met Kel'Nar's gaze. You're not erasing us. Not today. Yet in his silence she saw the flicker of doubt, the first crack in his ordered world. Kel'Nar's claws trembled as he gripped the console, the holographic display flickering under the strain of the orbital defenses. The chamber aboard the archival ship hummed with failing energy coils, their whine a desperate counterpoint to the thunderous impacts shaking the hull. Human ingenuity had turned the tide, those relentless boarding parties, their makeshift explosives breaching sections one by one. He'd underestimated them again, these primates who jury-rigged weapons from scavenged debris and turned his own historical databanks against him. From the viewport, Earth loomed larger now, a bruised marble streaked with the fires of re-entry debris. Kel'Nar had initiated the purge protocols hours ago, erasing vast swaths of Terran history from the galactic archives. But the humans had anticipated it. Their hackers, clever, adaptive, had mirrored the data to hidden servers on Luna, broadcasting it across the void like a defiant scream. Now, as his ship spiraled toward atmospheric entry, he faced the remnants of his crew. Only 3 left, their exoskeletons cracked from close-quarters combat. "Historian," rasped Lyervek the navigator, clutching a bleeding gash on his flank. "The core is destabilizing. We have minutes before cascade failure." Kel'Nar didn't turn. His mind raced through the annals he'd so meticulously curated, or destroyed. Earth's rise from barbarism to interstellar contender, a story he deemed too volatile, too disruptive to the ordered narrative of the Concordance. He'd woven lies into the records, painting humans as savage interlopers unworthy of preservation. But they'd fought back not with overwhelming force but with stories of their own, tales of grit and alliance that rallied unlikely allies among the fringe worlds. A sharp jolt rocked the ship and alarms blared. Human marines had breached the lower decks, their boots clanging like war drums. Kel'Nar activated the final safeguard, a neural upload of his consciousness into the ship's AI, a desperate bid to preserve his legacy. But as the interface latched onto his synapses, visions flooded in, not his curated histories, but raw, unfiltered human memories siphoned from the compromised networks. He saw a child in a war-torn city, sketching maps by candlelight to guide rescuers. An engineer on a failing colony ship, improvising seals from irradiated cloth. Soldiers sharing rations with former enemies, forging bonds in the rubble. These weren't the monsters he'd scripted. They were resilient, their triumphs earned through sweat and sacrifice. Lyervek slumped against the bulkhead, his eyes glazing. "They're coming." The airlock. The door hissed open before he could finish. Captain Elena Vasquez stepped through, her armored suit scorched and dented, rifle leveled. Behind her, Amir Khalid, the linguist who'd decoded the archival ciphers, and Sergeant Lena Torres, the demolitions expert whose charges had crippled the engines. They moved with the weary precision of survivors, not conquerors. "Kel'Nar," Elena said, her voice steady despite the blood trickling from a cut on her brow. "It ends here. Shut down the purge." He whirled, his elongated form casting shadows in the red emergency lights. The upload stuttered, half-complete, his mind fracturing between digital eternity and fleshy vulnerability. "You presume to judge me? I am the guardian of truth. Your kind disrupts the balance. Wars, migrations, endless cycles of chaos." Amir stepped forward, holopad in hand, projecting fragments of the restored archives. "Truth? You buried our alliances with the Vexery, our aid to the drifting Krell fleets. You made us villains to justify erasure. But look." The projection showed human ships towing asteroid-mined resources to starving outposts, crews laughing amid the void. Kel'Nar's mandibles clicked in denial, but doubt crept in. The ship groaned, gravity fluctuating as another explosion rippled through the frame. Lena primed a charge, her eyes hard. "We're not here to gloat. But if you don't comply, this vessel becomes your tomb and ours." The upload clawed at him, promising escape, but the human memories overwhelmed it. Camaraderie in foxholes, innovations born of desperation. He saw his own actions reflected, not as noble curation but as the erasure of potential. With a shudder, Kel'Nar severed the connection, his consciousness snapping back fully to his body. Claws dancing over the controls, he halted the purge, the databanks humming back to life with unaltered Terran lore. Elena lowered her rifle slightly. "Why?" "Because history isn't mine to hoard." His voice cracked, the weight of eons pressing down. "It's yours to live." The ship bucked violently, flames licking the hull as it skimmed the atmosphere. Alarms screamed descent trajectory. Amir patched into the NAV systems, his fingers flying. "I can stabilize us. Reroute auxiliary thrusters to the emergency bays." Lena nodded, slinging her rifle to assist. "Do it." "Elena, cover him." Together they worked, human and alien, in the flickering glow. Kel'Nar guided the controls, his knowledge of the ship's quirks proving vital as Amir's code wrestled the failing AI. Sparks flew, a panel shorted, singeing Lena's glove, but she pressed on, rerouting power cables with bare hands. Earth rushed up, continents blurring below. The ship shuddered into a controlled glide, thrusters firing in ragged bursts. They broke through the cloud layer, the vessel groaning as it aimed for an unpopulated stretch of Pacific. Impact loomed, but the adaptation held, barely. Water erupted around them in a colossal plume as the hull kissed the sea. Emergency pods ejected, carrying the unlikely survivors to the surface. Kel'Nar surfaced last, gasping in the alien brine, the weight of his scales no match for the humans' buoyant suits. They hauled him aboard a recovery sub not as prisoner but witness. As the sub dove toward safety, Elena met his gaze. The dim glow of the archive chamber flickered like a dying star, casting long shadows across the crystalline data spires that hummed with forbidden knowledge. Captain Alara Voss gripped the edge of the control console, her knuckles white against the alien alloy. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear, never from fear, but from the raw strain of overriding the final lockdown sequences. Beside her, Marcus Hale hunched over a makeshift translator rig, his fingers dancing across a jury-rigged interface of salvaged human tech and scavenged Vexery components. His breath came in short, ragged bursts, the weight of 11 cycles of pursuit etched into the lines around his eyes. Kel'Nar floated in the containment field at the chamber's center, his iridescent form pulsing with restrained fury. The alien historian's tendrils twitched, coiling like serpents ready to strike, but the field held for now. His voice echoed through the neural link, a sibilant hiss that burrowed into their minds. You primitives cling to your illusions of victory. The erasure protocol is complete. Earth's chronicle dissolves even as we speak. What remains is mercy. Submit and I may preserve a footnote of your species. Alara shot a glance at Marcus, her jaw set in that unyielding line that had carried her through asteroid storms and pirate ambushes. He's bluffing, she muttered, though doubt gnawed at the edges of her certainty. The plan had been straightforward at the outset. Infiltrate the Vexery Nexus, reverse the historical purge Kel'Nar had initiated from his orbital vault. But nothing about this archive was straightforward. The spires weren't just repositories, they were alive, adaptive, rewriting data flows to counter every hack they threw at it. Marcus wiped his brow with the back of his hand, smudging grease across his temple. Bluff or not, the core link stabilizing. If we sink the human archive fragment now. He paused as a low tremor shook the chamber, dust sifting from the ceiling like fine ash. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights pulsing along the walls. The rival Vexery enforcers, Kel'Nar's own kin loyal to the purity of unaltered history, had breached the outer defenses. Alara had bought them time with a desperate feint, rigging explosives to collapse a corridor, but the echoes of blaster fire still reverberated through the vents. They're closing in, Alara said, her voice steady as she sealed the access hatch with a plasma welder. Sparks flew, illuminating the scar on her cheek, a memento from the first raid on Kel'Nar's outpost. She turned back to the console, inputting the final override code. The spires whirred louder, a symphony of protest, and for a heartbeat the air thickened with static as if the very fabric of recorded time resisted their intrusion. Kel'Nar's laughter slithered through the link, cold and devoid of warmth. Your ingenuity is your curse, humans. You meddle with what you cannot comprehend. I sought only to excise the anomaly, your wars, your fleeting empires, a blight on the galactic tapestry. Now witness the cost. His tendrils flexed against the field, and a hairline fracture spiderwebbed across the energy barrier. Marcus cursed under his breath, rerouting power from auxiliary systems, but the drain was too much. Lights dimmed and the translator sparked ominously. Blair didn't hesitate. She slammed her palm on the emergency release, partially dropping the field just enough to lunge forward. In her hand the vibra knife hummed to life, its edge honed from Terran steel, unyielding like the people who forged it. She pressed it to the base of one of Kel'Nar's tendrils, not severing but close enough to draw a bead of luminescent ichor. Write this in your history, you bastard, she growled. Earth doesn't get erased. We rewrite the damn thing ourselves. The alien recoiled, his form shimmering with pain, but his eyes, those multifaceted voids, locked onto hers with a mix of hatred and reluctant awe. Foolish. The enforcers will tear this chamber apart. Your blood will stain the archives, not mine. Marcus's rig beeped triumphantly, the sync initiating. Data streams erupted across the holographic display. Fragments of human history, ancient migrations, spacefaring leaps, acts of defiance against cosmic odds, flooding back into the Vexery network. But the tremor intensified, the walls groaning as the Enforcer's breaching charges detonated nearby. A section of the ceiling buckled, raining debris that forced Alara to dive aside, the knife skittering across the floor. She scrambled up, retrieving it as Marcus yelled, "It's working, but we need more time. The protocol's fighting back, it's adapting." His hands flew faster, sweat flying from his brow, but a secondary alarm pierced the chaos. The containment field was failing completely. Kel'Nar surged free, his tendrils lashing out like whips, knocking Marcus against the console. The doctor slumped, groaning, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Alara spun, knife raised, positioning herself between the alien and her fallen comrade. The chamber doors hissed open under a barrage of energy bolts, Vexery Enforcers silhouetted in the breach, their weapons trained. Kel'Nar hovered triumphant, ichor dripping from his wounded appendage, a grotesque ink for the story he would now dictate. But in that suspended moment as blaster fire scorched the air, Alara saw the flicker in the display, the human data taking root, stubborn vines cracking through unyielding stone. It wasn't over. Not yet. She charged not at Kel'Nar but toward the spire's nexus core, the knife poised to carve her own mark into eternity. The Enforcers fired, and the world narrowed to heat and motion, her resolve a beacon in the gathering storm. Kel'Nar's tentacles trembled as he hunched over the crystalline archive console, the chamber's dim glow casting jagged shadows across his iridescent skin. The air hummed with the faint whine of failing stabilizers. Earth's captured orbital station, once a pinnacle of human ingenuity, now teetered on the brink of atmospheric re-entry. Captain Alara Voss gripped the railing beside him, her knuckles white, blood from a fresh gash on her forehead trickling down her temple. She didn't wipe it away, her eyes stayed locked on the alien, unblinking. "You thought you could scrub us out," Alara said, her voice steady despite the shuddering deck beneath their feet. "Rewrite the galaxy's memory like we were a glitch in your perfect history. But look around, Kel'Nar. Your fleet's in ruins, your archives are bleeding data, and this station? It's ours now." The historian's multifaceted eyes flickered, reflecting the chaos on the main viewport. Debris from the shattered Zarathian cruisers spiraling into the planet's blue curve below. His mandibles clicked in what might have been defiance or despair. "Humanity's tales are chaos incarnate," he rasped through the translator implant Alara had jury-rigged from scavenged parts. "Wars, migrations, endless folly. I sought to preserve order, to excise the anomaly before it corrupted the weave." Beside Alara, Dr. Liam Reyes wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers still stained with the conductive gel he'd used to hack the station's core. The wiry engineer-turned-reluctant hero had spent the last hours rerouting power, turning the aliens' erasure protocols against themselves. "Order." Liam snorted, punching a final sequence into the auxiliary panel. "Your order was just erasure with extra steps. We're not anomalies, we're the spark that keeps the stars from going cold." The station groaned, a deep metallic protest as gravity tugged harder. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, red lights pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Kel'Nar's manipulators hovered over the console, but Alara's boot pressed firmly on the severed cable at his base, pinning it in place. She'd learned that much from the intercepted logs. The Zarathians revered their historians as untouchable scribes, but touchable they were, frail beneath the pomp. "Finish it," Alara commanded, nodding to Liam. He hesitated, glancing at her, the woman who'd pulled him from the wreckage of their colony ship 3 cycles ago, her brave facade cracking only in the quiet moments when she admitted the fear of losing Earth's last echo. Their small crew whittled down to just the 2 of them, and this captive had clawed through ambushes and system failures, each victory bought with scars. Now the stakes hung on this final upload. Liam's hands flew across the controls, merging the corrupted archive with unaltered human records smuggled from the station's bowels. Images flooded the viewport overlay, ancient campfires on savannas, starlit launches from Kennedy's pads, the gritty defiance of asteroid miners. Not the sanitized voids Kel'Nar had peddled to the Galactic Council, but raw, unfiltered truth, humanity's grit etched in every frame. Kel'Nar recoiled as the data stream hit him, his body convulsing like a circuit overload. "No, the weave unravels." His voice cracked, the translator glitching into static. But Alara leaned in, her breath hot against his sensory frill. "Write it then. In our blood if you have to." Tell them how we fought, how we adapted, how we wouldn't fade. The upload completed with a resonant chime, the console's lights steadying to green. Liam exhaled, slumping against the wall. It's broadcasting. Every relay in the sector. Zorathian, neutral, whoever's listening. Earth's story unedited. The station lurched violently, hull plates buckling as re-entry flames licked the viewports. Ilara hauled Kel'Nar to his feet, the alien's weight surprising, hollow-boned like a bird stripped of flight. Escape pods now, she barked, shoving him toward the corridor. Liam followed, grabbing a medkit and the makeshift translator. They stumbled through sparking conduits, the air growing thick with smoke, each step a gamble against the countdown. In the pod bay, Ilara sealed them inside the last intact vessel, its cramped confines reeking of ozone and fear. Kel'Nar collapsed into a harness, his eyes dimming as the pod jettisoned, engines flaring against the inferno outside. Earth swelled in the tiny window, a marble of oceans and lights unbroken. As the pod arced toward the atmosphere, Liam patched into the broadcast feeds. Galactic chatter erupted, shock from allied worlds, outrage from the Zorathian enclaves. The erasure was reversed, humanity's history flawed and fierce, etched indelibly into the cosmic record. Ilara watched Kel'Nar, who stared blankly at the console now displaying fragmented human poetry, lines from Dickinson raw and defiant. "You'll write it all," she murmured, not a threat but a promise. "Our triumphs, our costs. Starting with this." The pod pierced the clouds, turbulence rattling